Look at me. Look at me. Up and about. I haven't done this in 20 years. I never had a chance to shine, never a happy song to sing, but suddenly half the world is mine. What an amazing thing, 'cause I've got a golden ticket. It's ours, Charlie. I've got a golden sun up in the sky.
We begin with a preamble over in the Chapel of Anticipation, which is kind of the things betwixt of the lands between. By fight or by flight, we must die to be reborn over here at the first step. Nearby, this guy says we're maidenless and fated to die in obscurity, and to follow the guidance of grace to Castle Stormvale for a fight with Godric. Stormvale is of course the large castle in the distance. Between here and there, a powerful tree sentinel patrols the path, and at the castle gate, Margit awaits. We don't get much other NPC guidance. After we visit 3 bonfires, Melina the Maiden gives us a horse, and after we beat Margit or visit a sufficiently distant bonfire, she takes us to the Round Table Hold, where we're told to again follow the grace. The guidance of grace we keep hearing about manifests as an actual golden arrow emanating from sites of grace pointing us toward the next one, eventually terminating in a major stronghold. So if we just follow the grace at first, it indeed leads up to Stormvale Castle, but that doesn't mean every grace in the world points to the same thing all the time. Let's suppose we don't go to the castle just yet. Where else can we go? Well, all of Limgrave is open. Besides Stormvale, Fort Hate is a smaller stronghold in Mistwood where we can find half of a Dectus medallion. To the south, the Weeping Peninsula is a slightly higher level area across the fortified Bridge of Sacrifice. The grace here points to Castle Morn, which is entirely optional unless you're doing side quests, but it's the main draw of the island. To the east is Caelid, where Scarlet Rot has turned the land into a hellscape. Like many others, I explored the dragon-burnt ruins near the start of the game and opened a trapped chest that teleported me to a distant tunnel off the shores of the Swamp of Aeonia. There's a significant spike in enemy difficulty and intimidation factor, especially if we follow the grace toward Redmane Castle where the boss battle with General Radahn awaits, although we can't trigger it quite yet. Also of note is Fort Feroth, where the other half of the Dectus medallion awaits. Liurnia is the lake bed past Stormvale Castle. You get the impression it's gated behind that dungeon, but there's an easily discovered route around the side of the castle allowing us to explore this vast land without killing Godric first. The grace here points to the unmissable Raya Lucaria and a boss fight with Rennala. To get there, we'll need the Glintstone Key, guarded by a dragon on this island first. There's a ton of other stuff in Liurnia, including a grace pointing to Caria Manor and Rani's Tower beyond, the gloomy village of the Albinaurics under the huge overhang, as well as the Moonlight Altar we can't reach yet. Assuming we retrieve both medallion halves, we can activate the Grand Lift of Dectus up to the Altus Plateau. Or without them, we can fight past a magma worm boss up the ruin-strewn precipice nearby. Altus is another sprawling, high-level zone where the grace points to the royal capital Leyndell. Additional roads lead to Mount Gelmir and the fiery Volcano Manor where Rykard awaits, along with the Serial Killer Club, and the poison-soaked shaded castle down in the valley, among other places. It is in Altus where we are finally stopped. We can't enter Leyndell itself without at least 2 great runes, and I just named the 4 bosses holding them. Note that visiting Altus is also the normal prerequisite for fighting Radahn. So that's at least 60% of the game that's just accessible from the start. Not to mention various little landmarks to discover, but that's still not all. There are 2 locations in Limgrave and Liurnia where we can use elevators to descend into the cavernous underground depths of the Siofra River and the Ainsel River respectively. The Mistwood entrance to Siofra's eternal city Nokron doesn't open until we defeat Radahn and one of the meteors he was magically holding up falls and leaves a big old crater. This is a multi-level zone with its own puzzles and bosses like the Ancestral Spirit. At the far end of Nokron is an elevator back up to an otherwise unreachable deep fissure in Caelid, and the coffin over here after another boss leads to another underground area, the Deep Root Depths. We can also see a sinister palace high in the distance, but we can't get there yet. The Deep Root Depths are flooded with sickly pale water and tough enemies. The main destination here is the climax of Fia's subquest and a boss battle with the Lich Dragon Fortisax, which we'll revisit shortly. After which, a portal offering a separate route into Leyndell opens up. We still need 2 runes to use the teleporter though, so it isn't really a workaround. Finally, we can head from Liurnia to the Ainsel River and find Eternal City Nokstella with some adjacent tunnels. Further below that city is the vast, intimidating Lake of Rot, and further beyond that is the Grand Cloister with the natural born of the Void, Estelle. Beyond that boss is finally a lift to Liurnia's Moonlight Altar. All this underground stuff is also technically accessible right from the start. Ultimately, we need to kill any two of Godric, the Stormvale boss, with Margit at the gates, Renala, the Raya Lucaria boss, with Red Wolf in the castle, Rodan, the Redmane boss, once his festival is underway, or Rykard, the Volcano Manor boss, who terminates some questlines in the process. Get 2 or more of their great runes, and we can enter the gate behind the Draconic Tree Sentinel guarding the actual capital of Leyndell. I thought this guy was harder than some of the bosses, by the way. From here, the path through Leyndell basically to the endgame is much more straightforward. After climbing all over the ossified corpse of the massive dragon Grandsax if we so choose, we navigate the streets to the center of the capital. The bosses Godfrey, the first Elden Lord's ghost, and Morgott, the true identity of Margit, await us as we approach the Erd Tree. The Erd Tree itself is sealed with thorns, and Melina implores us to burn it down by doing something up in the mountains. She hands over the mercifully complete rolled medallion, and a door into the ashy part of the city opens. Past the ash is an elevator down to the Forbidden Lands. This is a snowy, broken rock road through the fog and high up to the imposing Black Blade Kindred boss and the Grand Lift of Rold. The Finger Lady will try to talk us out of burning the tree down at this point. The lift lifts us to the mountaintops of the Giants, nearly level with the lowest branches of the Erd Tree. Cold and beautiful, but more linear with less to find and explore here. This long ridge road's really awesome, though. Along a frozen river, we can get a peek at some ruins far below, but no way to reach them yet. The frozen lake has an ice dragon lurking in the snowstorm, and the castle above even has an invisible path to cross like the Crystal Cave. We can follow the Grace here across the unsettling Flame Peak ancient graveyard and up to a battle with the last fire giant. When we manage to defeat him, we reach the Forge of the Giants. There are different ways to start the fire here, but supposing we start a fire, the Erd Tree will burn and we're transported to the last major area. Crumbling Farum Azula is awash with never-ending tornadoes and dragons. The main path leads along broken walkways toward the structure at the center where the Godskin duo and Malekith the Black Blade await. Elsewhere we can challenge Dragon Lord Placidusax, an ancient Elden Lord that predates the Erd Tree, and extremely metal. Defeating Malekith takes us back to Leyndell, but now the burning tree has had some time to coat the capital in a thick layer of ash. The Erd Tree is now accessible, while some areas of Leyndell become blocked off. And within the tree, we can fight the final string of endgame bosses. Sir Gideon from the Round Table Hold, Godfrey the First Elden Lord, real guy this time, / Horolo Warrior, and finally a Radagon two-hander directly into the majestic Elden Beast. After the final battle, we may have one more chance to select whichever ending we've met the criteria for out of 6 possible. However, some of them would involve visiting places we haven't mentioned yet, so let's finish out the map. On the far side of the mountaintops, guarded by the Deathrite Bird, is Castle Sol. In this remote outpost, Commander Niall is the boss in charge guarding half of the Halig Tree medallion. Way back in Liurnia, in the village of the Albinaurics, is a Pot in need of assistance who offers the other Halig Tree medallion. These 2 medallions can be used in combination at the Grand Lift of Rold to stop at the halfway point and discover the consecrated snowfield. This barren, unforgiving place has perpetual snowstorms and hides the remaining major areas. First, a bloody gate here will warp us back to Siofer River Underground, finally near that big ominous castle. This is Mohgwyn Palace, a challenging zone ruled by Mohg, the Lord of Blood, and his creepy egg prince, who I can't talk much about yet because the DLC isn't out. Otherwise, the last area is found by exploring the liturgical village Ordina and solving a puzzle where we light 4 statues in an alternate Evergaol version of the town. This puzzle opens a warp point to Miquella's Halig Tree in the distant fog. The Halig Tree involves descending the mossy, funky trunk of a rotting Erd Tree wannabe, eventually with some architecture built onto the bark, and further down, guarded by Knight Loretta, there's Elphael, Brace of the Halig Tree. As in, this town literally braces the dying tree from falling over. It's also an intense descent with the boss all the way at the bottom and plenty of strong stuff in between. By now, Malenia is one of the more infamous bosses for various reasons, but once she's defeated, our journey down here just sort of ends. Eventually, one runs out of things to kill. At this point, we've found all the major areas and considered the broad flow of progression, but there's so much other stuff. There's a bunch of catacombs and mini-dungeons to find, some that are just tunnels with enemies and some that have gimmicks. 9 tunnels provide weapon upgrade stones and are probably the most repetitive / boring subgroup. 16 catacombs have upgrade stones for your spirit buddies and canonically frequently occur near minor Erd trees. This one off Radahn's desert arena is cool because we can see his soldiers fighting Malenia's knights. 5 heroes' graves are the prankster dungeons with goofy traps that have upgrade stones for your elite spirit buddies. And 17 caves have a variety of rewards and gimmicks. Some, like Limgrave's coastal cave, even form tunnels to distant islands, or Altus's sealed tunnel that leads to a divine tower. There are others still, like the Hidden Path or the Perfumer's Grotto, but we'll ballpark it around 50 sites overall. Those will keep us busy if we're going to discuss each one individually, which we aren't. But the Leyndell Catacombs deserve a special mention for this delicious bit of level design. When we enter, we see a locked boss door and above, a second-floor balcony with an item. We next find a long hallway with a flame-throwing pillar trap at the end, and if we strike the pillar, we can disable it. The smooth top invites Stepan Aponst, and another strike reveals a secret little chapel above. Back here, a big staircase straddles a statue, and at the top we turn a corner and arrive at the second floor. We get that item, drop back down, and now we're seemingly back at the start, having made no progress unlocking anything. If we repeat our loop to the big staircase looking for something we missed, we'll just arrive back at the start again. But if we repeat that loop a third time, the game is given away when the flamethrower is missing and we somehow emerge above the big staircase. There are actually 3 near-identical floors and some sleight of hand going on. When we complete the first loop, we don't arrive back at the starting room, we arrive at a copy of it 1 floor up, and the second loop yields a third copy. The pillar on the second floor hides the secret, as the chapel above it has an additional side door that leads back to the first floor and the boss room switch we've been searching for. There are some clues along the way, like the item in front of the second statue that wasn't there at first, but this whole area is kind of a fun little troll. Alright, a few other landmarks. The major bosses confer beneficial great runes that we can activate by visiting corresponding divine towers, often via waypoints. These aren't always easy or direct to access, and some have guardian bosses of their own. The Frenzy Flaming Tower is a striking site that requires a careful approach so we aren't beset with madness, kind of like the big brain rays in Bloodborne's Nightmare of Mensis. The Church of Vows has a giant turtle, everyone remembers this guy. The 4 belfries have waygates which can offer tiny glimpses of Nokron and Farum Azula before we get there properly, as well as a way back to the starting island. In Altus, there's a folk horror windmill village full of dancing witches. I should probably say a little bit more about dragons and other distributed menace. The named dragon encounters are Elder Dragon Grail, who's the biggest one, doesn't move, and can be killed easily from the right position. Glintstone Dragon Smarog, guiding the Raya Lucaria key. Flying Dragon Agheel, elsewhere in the swamp. Decaying Exyx, the rotting dragon in Caelid. Flying Dragon Grail, who doesn't really fly very much and hangs out on the bridge. Glintstone Dragon Ajula, who tracks Ranni's quest with half of its fight near the Three Sisters and half up on the plateau. Magma Worm Makar, guarding the climb to Altus. Ancient Dragon Landsax, who roams the plateau and also relocates at half health. Borealis, the freezing fog in the frigid lake. Great Worm Theodorix in the snowfield. And finally, the 2 aforementioned bosses with cool names, Lich Dragon Fortisax and Dragon Lord Placidusax in Farum Azula. Also, there's Grandsax, would-be destroyer of Leyndell. Fortunately, he's not around to squish us anymore. There are 7 wandering mausoleums we can knock down in order to duplicate 1 boss soul each, 11 minor Erd trees with Asylum demonish avatar bosses, 10 Everjails offering challenging underground duels in these radar dish arenas, and numerous notable overworld bosses like Wormface, the Deathbirds, the various trolls, and so on. So there's stuff everywhere. Something that is lost compared to the previous Souls games is the total control developers have over the direction from which we approach every location. With the Legacy dungeons, they're pretty careful to restrict our approach. Stormveil up on a funneling hill, Raya Lucaria via teleports, Redmane across the bridge, Leyndell surrounded by a huge wall with a single door, Haligtree via its branch, and so on. In fact, nearly every location of note, the villages, the forts, the walled towns, the canyon floors, tend to have some kind of elevation shift or constructed barrier to guide us into them in a specific way. A lot of that wouldn't work as well if we could just clamber over the wall anywhere we wanted to, like Link. And now we await the shadow of the Erd Tree. Thanks for watching.
I want the world. I want the whole world. I want to lock it all up in my pocket. It's my bar of chocolates. Give it to me now. I want today. I want tomorrow. I want to wear 'em like braids in my hair, and I don't want to share 'em.